Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast with Michael Becker and Paul Peebles. During this program, you will hear interviews with real-life successful investors who will share their stories and provide useful advice on how to acquire, finance, and operate apartment complexes. Now, here they are, Michael Becker and Paul Peebles.
Welcome to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Peebles, National Underwriter for Old Capital. And joining me today would have been the Mayor Governor of the great state of real estate here in Texas, Mr. Michael Becker, but he is on another due diligence assignment. He is buying a property down in Buda, Texas, which is about 20 miles south of Austin, another property in his SPI portfolio that he is buying. So you wanted to focus in on that, so he wasn't able to join us on the podcast. So we wish him and his group over at SPI a lot of luck on the takedown of that large property. So don't forget, coming up, May the 17th, we're talking about capital calls at the Old Capital Speaker Series, how to talk to your investors, how to talk to your friends that have invested in your properties, how to talk with the lenders, how to really resell the deal if you are in need of doing a capital call. We're going to kind of lay it all out for you. Typically, we wouldn't handle something like this, but I think it's something good for everyone to talk about, that if you need an extra $15,000, $20,000 more, if you put $100,000 in, you need to know how to raise money from your limited partners, from your common equity. So we're going to be talking about capital calls and how to frame the argument, how to frame the promotion of trying to get in money to keep your property going. So May 17th, we have Neil Bawa, the famous Neil Bawa is going to come in, and we're going to do a virtual conference. We usually do these conferences in person. We usually have 300, 400, 500 people show up, but this one's going to be virtual. So we'll have a lot of people on this one, but you have to RSVP to the oldcapitalpodcast.com, oldcapitalpodcast.com. Please RSVP for this event. This is going to be a good one. You'll learn a lot, and we want to see you there. If you're going to be in the Old Capital application, oldcapitalpodcast.com, make sure you give us a 5-star rating. We would certainly do appreciate that. We think we bring a lot of good content. And in fact, talking about good content, we have a friend of ours that we've known for a while that we want you to meet. I guess I didn't realize we had not done a podcast with this gentleman. So this is going to be exciting because he is not your typical investor that maybe sometime that just came into multifamily. He has been in multifamily, I'm going to say for 36, 37, 38 years, a long time. So we're going to learn a lot of knowledge about somebody who's been in the multifamily business. He started off as multifamily management, and then he transitioned into multifamily ownership. On the podcast today with our friend Ricardo Hinojosa. Ricardo, how are you?
I'm good. It's good to be here.
Is Robert Tenney. Robert, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you guys for having me.
So Robert is a multifamily owner operator. He has bought a number of transactions, but I want to hear a little bit about his history. I'm going to turn it over to Ricardo, and Ricardo, give Robert the 20 questions.
Fantastic. Let's get started. So Robert, again, thank you for being here. We've been great friends for a while now since you got started in the business, but let's start with your history because it is you've been in the business for a long time and in many big roles with a lot of big national operators. So let's talk about your history a little bit.
Well, yeah, I started in property management after graduating and from college and just worked my way up through the years. I've headed up management companies of up to about 26,000 units, headed up asset management divisions. The joke I always tell is I always thought it was like a law firm that I would someday be appointed or made a partner like a law firm. And it only took me about 30 years, I'm a slow learner, to learn that doesn't really happen in property management. So then I started looking at 401ks and stuff like that and thinking, how does this math work? I had a portfolio where I raised the NOI 30% a year for 3 years in a row. And what I got for that was a real nice thank you letter from the owner saying, thank you very much. That was great. And I held on to that for about 30 years thinking, wow, that's so awesome. I'm acknowledged. I didn't understand the secret sauce, what I was missing, meaning the profit motive, the money behind that 30% NOI increase. So, I've been past president of the New Mexico, Tarrant County, Dallas Apartment Associations at different times, TAA Executive Committee, and then I was on the National Apartment Association Board of Directors for I don't know, about 18 years and head of NAA PAC and just been involved in the industry for a long time before I decided to get into the syndication ownership side.
Fantastic. So just kind of thinking about that, there's a lot of these large national management companies, a lot of, great senior executives that have a ton of experience. Why do you think we don't see more kind of doing what you did, kind of jumping over into the ownership side? What kept you there for so long? And then what really pushed you to go to the next level?
I think so many of us Americans are hardwired into that W-2 mindset, paycheck to paycheck, work hard, I'll get promoted, that kind of thing. And it kind of mutes your entrepreneurial spirit. And I had situations where I did a great job for a portfolio or for a company. And then they said, gosh, Robert, thank you so much. You've done such a great job. We're selling your portfolio and we're only going to have properties on the coast now. So good luck to you. Hope you do well. So you burn through your savings while you're trying to find your next job, your next gig, and then you start the roller coaster over again. So like I said earlier, I finally, it only took me about 30 years to think the math doesn't really work as far as retirement. What am I going to do at that point? And so I finally jumped off the deep end, which was very scary to leave that big corner office, and the big salary and all of that to think, I think this works. I think I understand the secret sauce now, but do I really? So it wasn't an easy decision.
So let's talk a little bit about that because, you were on one side of the equation. You were managing other people's properties. You weren't managing your own properties. So you were in a third-party property management company. So somebody that was hired to keep an eye on somebody else's property. And all of a sudden you said, boy, there's a better way of doing this. I wonder how I can move over from working for somebody to being, in this case, the man. Coming on over to the ownership side, a lot of people, at a certain age think, I want to be the man or the woman, so to speak. That, but for you spent 30 years working for the man, and all of a sudden you came over. So what really was the motivation, and how did you make that transition? Was it the confidence? Was it the money to bring together? You already had the experience. You were making these people that you were working for millions and millions of dollars. And so talk to me a little bit about that pathway.
So, when I was NAA, the National Apartment Association PAC chair, I raised a couple of $1 million over a couple of years for the PAC. So I thought, I can do this. I can go out and I can raise money. I can syndicate my deals and all of that. And what I quickly learned was my friends and family, they saw me walk in the room and they ran away as fast as they could because they thought Tenning's going to be asking for money again. So I had a friend who was already in Lifestyles Unlimited, who for about 5 years tried to get me to join. And he'd had the same career path as I was on. So I finally went to their 2-day seminar and thought, this is how you get leverage. This is how, I just learned a lot of things I didn't know before. So that was what helped me get the confidence to kind of jump off the diving board.
Fantastic. So I think that the education groups and a group like Lifestyles Unlimited that we're huge fans of, I think that speaks volume because you're as experienced as they come, but you still felt like there was a ton of value there for you to go in, learn, and it also allowed you an ability to network and then raise capital. So I think that's fantastic. Paul, we were kind of prepping for this call earlier today, Robert and I was just so Robert obviously knows his history, but I was going through and remembering the deals we've done because we've been fortunate to be with Robert throughout his entire, as he's acquired these deals over the last 5 or 6 years, and his results are pretty phenomenal. So Robert, let's just jump in. So you started acquiring deals when on your own?
We bought our first deal, 120 units in 2017.
And since 2017, go ahead.
Right, and then we've bought almost 1,500 units since then, 6 properties, and have gone full cycle on 5 of them where we've sold them. Just realized it was the optimal time to maximize our profits, and we sold them. Now we're looking at another property now, so it's just keeping your feet in the water.
That's pretty amazing. 6, over a little over a 5-year period, you've been, acquiring a deal a year, and in that time frame, you've been able to go full cycle, which means you've been able to turn the deals. And I think you've sold you sold those 5, right? They weren't refinances, they were sales.
That's correct.
That's a pretty outstanding track record, I would say. And not only that, the numbers, Robert and I were going through the numbers, the returns on those deals, they were pretty much all home runs. So Robert, I mean, just give folks a little bit of a flavor in terms of what you were able to do on those assets.
We sold one of them, well, 2 of them, for all your initial investment plus about 104% in addition to that in 2 years. We sold another one, all your money back plus about 84% in 2 years. So those were absolutely home runs. And then I guess one was just a triple because it only did about 67% in 2 years after all your money back.
Fantastic.
That's very good. I mean, again, with your experience level, I mean, a lot of people don't come with the 30 years of knowledge of multifamily of management experience that you did. But again, those numbers, I mean, we have to talk a little bit about that. Past performance is not indicative of future returns. So you were really buying these properties the last, 6 or 7 years, good values, up and coming values. Did you guys, today's maybe a little bit different. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about that and what keeps you up at night today. But let's talk a little bit about, let's just focus on 1 or 2 of the properties that you had purchased. Were they stabilized properties? Were they 1990s, they 1980s, 2010? Walk through 1 or 2 of the properties and paint a picture for me and for the audience about what these properties actually look like.
Sure. So all of our deals to date have been 1980s era product.
And why is that? Why 1980s for you? Tell us, why would you choose 1980s versus 1970s or 1990s?
I didn't want 60s or 70s. You get into asbestos management, lead management, all kinds of government stuff that I just did not want to be involved with. I know 80s products really well because that's I started in about 86 to date myself. But I know the submarkets very well. There was a big building boom of apartments in the 80s. So there's a lot of product available. But I typically, like since our last purchase in about October of 21, I've probably underwritten at least 80 deals that I've said no to because, I look at the location of it. And what I mean by that is it a good, solid working class? Is it a good neighborhood? Is it undermanaged or has it been owned by one person for a long time? So there's a lot of skin on it where you can come in and make improvements and manage it better. But one thing I've learned is I've managed, you name it, from brand new lease ups to some of the worst parts of the country, as far as like really, really bad properties that it doesn't matter what you do, it's still going to be in a really bad location. There's only so much you can do with it. So I'm pretty picky about location, the schools, even the justice of the peace, as far as evictions, so that you can actually manage your property and take care of the people that want to take care of the property and want a good place to live. So
it wasn't really just because it had the lowest price per door that you bought it. It really, because you could have the lowest price per door in the hood, so to speak, and it just wouldn't hit your checklist of the reasons why to buy it.
absolutely.
You were looking for schools and retail around the property, condition of the asset. You wanted to make sure it wasn't a 2-pipe chiller or a flat roof. And so you had a kind of a specific level of knowledge that a lot of people don't, that are not from real estate, that maybe have not gone through some of the training that you've gone through or the life experiences that you've gone through. They may buy that stuff, but you're buying something selective. So
Very much so. I mean, there's even parts of Dallas-Fort Worth that we will not buy in because we know of the foundation movement that you're just inherently going to have problems. So we won't even look in those areas. There's a couple of cities we just will not look at because of either the police force, the schools, whatever. So yeah, we've been very picky.
No doubt. So I can definitely vouch for that. So Robert and I look at deals together quite a bit. And like he said, he hasn't purchased something since 21.
Yeah, well, why would he continue to rely upon you, Ricardo? I mean, you're not really part of his team. You're the financing guy. So why would an operator like Robert really rely upon what you're saying? I mean, I guess you are part of his team because you're giving him sensible advice. Would that be something that you would probably pontificate, Ricardo, about the benefits of really having a relationship with your lender as much as you and Robert have?
Yeah, I think it's important to have and I'll let Robert talk about how he built his team, but we've known each other for a long time and we built up a great relationship. And I think with your lender or with your team in general. I think the more assets you have, the better. And Robert and I both know this market very well. And we're always bouncing deals off of each other, trying to find something that works. And I will attest to Robert is extremely picky on location, and that's worked for him. I mean, he has a fantastic track record. I put a ton of deals in front of him that he's like, no, I know a little bit too much about that location, or the school district is not good enough, or for whatever reason, but he picks right. Robert, anything you want to add in terms of, building your team and kind of what that's done for you and your business over the last several years?
Could not do it without the team. And that goes from you guys on the finance side, legal, accounting, tax consultants to help with taxes, my insurance. I've got 2 insurance groups that I really like. So first of all, you guys in the brokerage community that I've made relationships with, mainly through you guys. Thank you for that. I could not have done this without those relationships. I mean, I would not have these brokers saying, hey, Robert, you really need to consider this deal. Then I know that I can very quickly go to Ricardo and Old Capital, and you guys are going to run the numbers for me really quickly to verify if my underwriting is, online or not. Law firm that can turn stuff around. I mean, this deal that we're doing right now, we got the letter of intent Friday. We had to have it turned around by Monday. My attorney worked on it all day Saturday, got it back to me Saturday, and we submitted it. And we feel like that's one of the big things that helped us get this property over some other heavy hitters that were looking at this really nice property. So the relationships are critical. And it is truly a relationship where everybody are friends and help each other and are looking out for each other. So it's just it's great to have a really solid team behind you.
Why don't we talk a little bit about this latest property you sold? Because we're sitting here in May of 2023, and we're not seeing a ton of transactions in the market right now. But you've just come off selling and a deal in a great location that turned out to be another home run. You want to just give some highlights on that deal in general, and then why you decided to sell in the market right now?
So we absolutely loved this property, loved the location, loved the property, everything about it. And we bought it on an adjustable rate mortgage or note, like so many people did before the rates went through the roof. So we got caught with that. And so I started looking at all the options. A refinance, do we just try to ride this out and hope and see? So, I mean, we were running sale options, refinance options, recapitalization options, all kinds of stuff. I mean, scenario after scenario. I would hate to get rid of a property like that from a management fee standpoint. It's great, steady income, but that's not my responsibility. My responsibility is to be the best steward of my investors' funds. And when we ran all of the analysis, it made the most sense to sell it. And in that process, we had 3 groups come to us asking to buy it. And they came in a little bit low from what I would consider. And we got them up to a number I was comfortable with, that we owned the deal in 2 years, and we got the sales price at our 3-year pro forma. So we beat our pro forma hands down, got a great return for our investors. And in this unsure economy right now, where you don't know where rates are going, you don't know what the Fed is going to do, all these things that are out of your control, I just felt like it was the best decision for the investors.
Yeah, they wanted to make sure that the nest egg was safe and secured. And as many of these people had put their hard-earned money into these transactions, and they wanted to have somebody like Robert to, really stay on top of what's going on. So let's talk a little bit about the deal. Let's put a picture in people's heads. Property was in North Texas. How big of a property was it? What year was it built? Give me a kind of a visual. Tell me a little bit about it. Was individually metered?
Sure.
What year was it built?
360 units in Bedford, Texas, which is a really nice, beautiful suburb of Dallas, heavily wooded, hilled. It sits on a little lake. I mean, it's just a site you can't replicate. Yeah, individual hot water heaters, normal shingle roofs, so not flat roofs. But it's just an absolute beautiful property. I mean, you just drive it, and it just, they've never since it was built in, I think, 83, they've never had to put gates on it, fencing on it. It's in a very safe neighborhood with the police. I mean, you think about that, through the 40 or 50 years, no owner has ever felt the need to have to put gates or fencing around it, like most properties these days, because it's just in a very, you hate to use the word safe anymore, but it's in a very safe environment, beautiful setting.
It would kind of remind you of a little place that grandma used to own, and it was a very safe neighborhood, and it would have, it was really for your investors with a 5-year pro forma that you were thinking about holding that property.
Yeah,
So
that's correct.
yeah, and so that's how they originally spoke about the deal to the investors to bring the investors in. But seeing where the economy was going, that it felt better, safer for the nest egg to be protected. And so, Ricardo, tell me a little bit about the original loan that was done on the property. Was that a Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac bridge loan? Tell me a little bit about what you remember about that transaction from a few years ago.
Yeah, no. So we put it was an agency loan, Freddie Mac. It was a Freddie floater, as Robert mentioned. So the key there is we had some debt service coverage going in, right? So going in, we're at a 125, and I think this story really talks to how Robert was able to add value to that deal in a short period of time, because we all know the cap rates have expanded a little bit, have widened across the country and here in DFW as well. But to take that deal, to be able to sell it in this market in 2 years and still deliver home run returns for his
and
investors.
sell really for a profit, a good sized profit in this market, which is challenging because you have interest rates up higher. Mm-hmm. Economy's possibly going to get into a recession, or if it's not in a recession right now, you have cap rates that have expanded, and you're like, oh, what should I do about this deal? What are my options? And so
a little thing called property taxes.
And property taxes went up, and insurance has gone up. And so there was a lot of things that, as a good steward of people's money, they had to think about this. And so, Ricardo, keep going.
Yeah. So I think what Robert mentioned earlier when we were talking about scenarios, right? So I think when you buy right and you're able to push the value, push the NOI on these deals, it gives you options. So Robert had the option. We could have refinanced the deal, and it would have still been a great decision for Robert and his investors, but not as good as some of these offers that came to the table. So he had the flexibility because he was able to push and deliver results on the deal. He had options and ended up with a great solution, with that sale in a tough market. So kudos to you and your team, Robert. Great deal.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, and that group that bought the property, they walked away with a big smile on their face. They thought very highly of Robert and his team. What's so good about some great buyers these days, they thank the seller for selling them a deal. So it's kind of have to be like a win-win scenario, win for the buyer, win for the seller. But in this case, I don't think the seller could have done a better job for the buyer to prep the property. They didn't let the numbers go down. They let they did a very good job at keeping the NOI up. And the buyer was very pleased with Robert on the way that the handoff was done. So that was great. Anything more, Robert, on that one transaction that kind of rings your bell that you think would be important for people that are getting into the business or want to learn the business? They want to be like Robert Tenney?
Just in general, it's a difficult time right now to be buying or selling. You better have good financing and people like you behind you to help you get across the finish line, because there's a lot of obstacles. It's a very variable market right now where treasuries are changing daily, rates are changing. So you just have to really go back to the team. You have to have a good team in place to really get this through. And even the company that bought this property is a highly reputable, highly respected group that's been buying a lot of assets that really know what they're doing. It's challenging for everybody right now to get these things closed. So, it was very impressive to see them perform to the level they did, but I do think it was a win-win for all of us. And it was the seller and the buyer working very well together to get it across the finish line.
It's always good to have classy buyers where they sent on social media how much they enjoyed working with Robert as the seller. So that was awful damn nice too. So that was good.
I agree.
Yeah. Ricardo, what else?
So why don't we talk a little bit about how you're structured with all that experience? I know you self-manage, you use third party. How are you structured from an operation standpoint?
We definitely self-manage. Again, with my experience and background, honestly, I thought it was not fair to a fee management company for me to give them the account because I know enough to be dangerous. I would be in their business all the time.
Too much to be dangerous. You bet.
Yeah. I'd be asking questions or encouraging or pushing all the time. And honestly, I've seen a lot of fee managers that they're more interested in things like getting the next account or just, they're not aligned with my interest. And I thought, here I am, a new person with one property at the time, and they've got another client that's got 20 properties. Well, who's going to get the better regional manager? Who's going to get the better accountant, the more attention? It just did not make sense to me to fee manage it. So yeah, I started from day one doing it myself, and I just feel more comfortable about that. I sleep better at night knowing that I'm going to be looking and digging and everything anyway, so I might as well be doing it myself.
Yeah, you were not new to the industry. You knew the industry for 30, 35 plus years before you bought your first property. So I couldn't think of a better manager than you.
What do you think about, we have a lot of guests on the podcast, and we ask this question a lot. Hey, do you self-manage, do you use third party? We get a lot of mixed answers there. What's your take when somebody comes to you and, hey, I'm let's say they don't have your experience. They're an IT professional or a business professional that's getting into this business, and they want to go buy a 100-unit property. How do you normally guide them? Do you think it's normally a good idea to start with third party, or to kind of build up a team of your own?
In that scenario, I would say you definitely would want third party, in my opinion, because even for me, with all my years experience, I'm used to running large companies. So I'm used to having a head of HR, a head of accounting, a head of marketing. And when you go out and you're on your own, it's like, hey, I have an HR question. Oh, that's me. Hey, I have a marketing question. Oh, that's me. I've learned there's a lot of things that, I have not known because I relied on other individuals that were really good in their field. So somebody coming into property management with no experience, I cannot imagine trying to do that, plus be the general partner dealing with your investor side, the communications and financial statements, and all of that stuff. So, that's almost like a whole nother job in and of itself. So yeah, if you're in that scenario, Ricardo, you pointed out, I'd say you need a fee manager. You just need to make sure it's a reputable fee manager and somebody, really check your references and just make sure you get a really good one.
How do you check references on that? You're in the business, and what should people that are new to the business that want to hire a third-party property management company, what references are you checking? Are you checking with other operators that they do business with? There's nothing on Yelp that says they'll give you, 2 stars or 3 stars.
No, that's a great question. And I think it would be hard because if I'm going to go to XYZ management company and say, gosh, give me some references, I'm pretty sure they're going to give me just the 5-star, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to tell me, well, we had this really bad experience, but this is what happened. So that's where a Lifestyles Unlimited to me really comes in handy for these new leads or syndicators, because you can ask the people that are there, the other syndicators, and they'll tell you, hey, this company I've never had a problem with. This company I would never touch again. So having that network of fellow people helps a lot versus you being a first-time person doing it on your own and going out and just doing a Google search or for fee managers in Dallas-Fort Worth. I'd say, gosh, good luck to you, because that's going to be a scary proposition.
There's so many scary aspects to the business if you don't have the right team. So I think, the whole network, building your network is so important. So if you're new to this business, I think that's where you start. You start building your network, get educated, find the right people like Robert to kind of connect with, learn from. Super important.
One thing I'd encourage anybody is, and somebody told me this years ago, is that too many property managers, and especially fee managers, are busy looking in the rearview mirror, explaining what happened last month. And when I say explaining, it's often making excuses for what happened last month, as opposed to looking out the front windshield and seeing what's about to hit you and planning ahead. So that always stuck with me. It's like, be looking forward. Don't think about yesterday. Look at what's going on now and what's about to come. And that's served me very well through the years.
Talking about that, what keeps you up at night these days, for one, and then 2, what gets you motivated in the morning when you jump out of bed in this business?
Honestly, it's the things that are beyond my control. Taxes, the Fed, what they're doing with rates, your mortgage terms. those kind of things, all these things that are out of your control, where you sometimes feel like you're the puppet on the end of the puppet strings and others are pulling the strings. It's like, but we're doing a great job. It's the best we can do. We've got a property we're still pushing rents very well. And the property 2 doors down from us is offering 6 weeks to 2 months free on a 1-year lease. And I've been through this cycle before, and they will get people in, but long term, that tends to be to the detriment of your resident profile. It runs the property down. And if you maintain your property like we are, we will in the long term be a lot further ahead than them and maintaining our quality, maintaining our rents. But you just see challenges like that, things that are out of your control. And that's the stuff that'll keep you up at night.
And what gets you motivated to jump out of bed?
Feeling like you're making a difference, both for your investors and even more than that, or at least equal to that, is for the residents. My last W-2 job, we got rated #1 in the nation for customer service for 5 or 6 years in a row out of the whole national survey. That's not just kind of a mission for me, but it also has business benefits. It lowers your turnover. Your employees then have a sense of purpose and they're part of something important. So your employee turnover is lower, and consequently, your returns are better.
So, Ricardo, this is the reason why I like talking to guys that are about my age or a little bit younger, as in Robert.
But not as good looking.
There you go. That, he has a history behind him that certainly helps people that are brand new into the industry, that, he's probably a very good mentor to a lot of folks that are in his network that rely upon Robert for information about, how was it done before? And have you seen this before? And how did you handle this before? So, guys that have done this for a long period of time are a wealth of information. And so any words of wisdom to some of the folks that are just getting in here that want to get into commercial real estate, they want to diversify a little bit out of the stocks, bonds, and the market itself, or investing in those regional bank stocks that they like to invest in these days. But, what is your history over a period of time? Has commercial real estate made money for investors? Has it lost money for investors? I know that right now it's a challenging time, but historically, from the period of time that you joined the industry in the 1980s and mid 1980s, like I did, what has it done? Is it done pretty well over a period of time?
Yeah, in the aggregate, absolutely, it's done well. I started in '86, I believe, right after tax reform, which was comparable to what we're going through now as far as the economics in commercial, and it wiped out a lot of people. So, that was a bad time, but I wasn't in an ownership position then, so I kind of got to be looking at what was going on with not having the stress at night of, gosh, this is my personal assets and everything else. But I learned a lot of really good lessons. We had a company where they actually had a hotline to the corporate office that when the lender walks in and says, "Manager, give me the keys," they knew if you handed them the keys legally, somehow that transferred the ownership right then and there, and they were the receiver. If you ushered them out the door and locked the door and then called the hotline, the corporate office knew exactly what to do to get the legal team involved. That's how I started in the business. So,
oh my gosh,
everything's been pretty easy since then. The last 10 years, 7 years or so have been, honestly, I think even a bad operator could make money because the rising tides were rising so high for everybody.
Sure.
All boats rose. And we're going through another challenging time where you better be a good operator, really know what you're doing and keeping the ship on course. Because if you don't, before you know it, your ship's going to be going in the completely wrong direction. And it's a lot harder to correct at that point.
Any funny stories after being in this business for such a long period of time, whether it is tenants or lenders or it is whatever part of the community, anything that you can think of that you chuckle at every once in a while?
I could probably write books, but I've joked for years that I'd love, there's to write a book where one column is what you had to respond to your customer with, and then the second column is what you wished you could have said to that person, because you see all aspects of human nature.
Yeah, you certainly do. Is that a lot of these folks that live in the property and these high, they're high density properties. So you have people kind of on top of each other, so to speak, in 3-story buildings or 4-story buildings or 5-story buildings. Large density, and they all have opinions and they all want to send that email to the manager how they used to do it, but now it's their Google invites that have nothing but reputation management. So they all want to put their complaints online. So some of them you have to listen to, some of them you don't. Ricardo, just finishing up a little bit on Robert, what are some of the important things that we didn't talk about that you thought was important?
Well, Robert brings a wealth of knowledge. His track record speaks for itself, and it's been a pleasure to kind of see him go to work over the last 6 years or so and really deliver results. Robert, we don't want to talk about anything specific, no specific deals, but long term, what's next for you? What are you looking to do going forward?
We're buying 90s and newer product. The deal we're looking at right now is 2000s and newer. I think that's just a great niche right now. I mean, they're still they're quality assets in great locations, and they're only 20 years old. So there's a big difference between that and a 40-year-old 1980s deal. So we're definitely, I think lower R&M cost, and just I'm finding the insurance costs are considerably lower. And it's just, honestly, it's an easier deal to manage than a deep value add where you have to go in and do the massive brain damage of repositioning the property. These deals are in better shape. So you can go in and do some improvements, better management, hopefully, and you still have the potential for a lot of upside on the rent. So that's kind of our focus at this point right now, is to look at those. And we think there's about to be a lot of really good buying opportunities, and a window right here where before a lot of people start the mad run again into multifamily. So we're really opportunistic and looking for new deals right now.
Robert, any last words of wisdom for somebody that wants to come into the business, wants to either invest in the business, become eventually to be the Robert Tenney in the future? It's easy to become Robert Tenney. You have to do what Robert's done for 30 years, then you can 35 years, then you can become Robert Tenney. But any other advice to some of the new folks that are just coming into multifamily?
Nothing is guaranteed, but I think real estate in the long term is one of the better investment opportunities. And most definitely out of those choices, I would say multifamily, because people have to have a place to live. There's a shortage of housing. And I don't think you can say that about office, about retail, some of the other sectors. So I think just be wise with your money, really know if you're, as an investor, really know your lead or syndicator. So it's somebody you trust and that they're a good management.
Some great words of wisdom by Robert Tenney. So Robert, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you and just get to chat with you, or what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Sure. mrtrealtygroup.com, or email is rtinning, TINNING at mrtmgmt.com.
That's great. So Robert, thanks for spending some time with us. We do appreciate that. Good luck on your future endeavors. Ricardo, any last words that you want to
Great
talk
time.
about?
Thanks for joining us, and I'm sure we'll do this again sometime soon, Robert. So
Great,
that's great.
Guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right. We'll see everybody on May 17th at the Old Capital Speaker Series featuring Neil Bawa talking about capital calls and all the fun that goes along with that. So go make sure you RSVP to Old Capital Podcast, and also give us a 5-star rating if you can on the Old Capital Podcast iTunes account. So we appreciate it. Thanks, Robert Tenney. Thanks, Ricardo Hinojosa. I'm Paul Peebles. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the Old Capital Real Estate Investing Podcast. Please join us at oldcapitalpodcast.com to sign up for our weekly email updates. We'll see you next week for another great interview.